welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then just welcome. Please remember to hit the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. It all just helps me out with the YouTube algorithms and everything, you know. So I guess you guys can probably tell what this video is going to be about today with all my pretty blood-soaked murder weapon accessories that I am wearing. Yep, we're doing another true crime video. So I got this cool jewelry from one of my best friends because she loves true crime too, and you know, she just gets it. I mean, she gets it. So yeah, obviously, I'm sure you guys could read the heading. Today we're doing the Griekwastad Murders. So Griekwastad is a town in the Northern Cape. It's a small farming community, and I had no idea about this case, to be perfectly honest. I don't know how I never knew about it because it just happened in 2012, so it's not like it was that long ago or anything. But I think what maybe happened, at least in my case, is that the Oscar Pistorius Rivas Steenkamp case, the trial was going on in 2014, and this Griekwastad Murders case was also happening in 2014, and I guess Rivas' murder case probably got more media coverage than murder that happened in a small farming community. So I think that's probably why I haven't heard about it. But anyway, it definitely did make national news. If you go look online, it was everywhere. A lot of people really were following the case, did know about the trial, did know about the murders and all of that. So I don't know which rock I lived under. But anyway, we are here now. I know about it. I've done lots of research. So I've got you. Oh, I just want to give my usual disclaimer, trigger warning, all of those things. So everything that I'm going to say in this video is just information that I collected off of different websites and internet sites and everything. It's free information available to all the public. Anyone can go look it up. I just took it all and put it together in one video. And then also there is going to be some descriptions of the murders. Unfortunately, in this case, there's also going to be descriptions of sexual assault and rape. There's also incest. So there's going to be no graphic images this time. There's no crime scene photos or anything like that. I'll just be describing, you know, the injuries and events, obviously, and things that happened around the crimes and the murders and stuff. So if any of that is something that you are not comfortable listening to, or it might trigger you or something, you're welcome to either skip ahead. I will give a warning before I start explaining what happened, or you can skip out of this video and watch another one next time. But as I always say, if you are watching true crime videos, I guess you should kind of be expecting this kind of content, so it shouldn't come as a surprise, but I just give the warning in case anyway. So as usual, I think I'm just going to start with the background of the family, just so that we can get an idea of who the victims were. You know, their lives obviously matter, so that we can just understand them before they became victims. So this is the Steenkamp family. It was 44-year-old Dion Steenkamp. His wife Christel Steenkamp was 43 years old, and their two kids. Their oldest child is Don Steenkamp. He was 15 years old when this happened, and Marthella Steenkamp, she was 14 years old when this happened. So that's the Steenkamp family. So they lived on a farm in a farming community. Their farm was called Nauhoek, and Dion Steenkamp, the dad, he actually owned about 5 farms. He owned like lots of land. This family was very wealthy. He was a very good businessman. Farmlands had been in his family for generations and generations. That's all that their family knew. That's where they got all their money and their wealth and their reputation in the town from. So it was very important to them. And then Christel was very active within the community. She was active with the agricultural community, with the church. She even freelanced for the local newspaper, and she owned her own baking company where she would bake and distribute biscuits and things like that. So she was a full person all on her own right. She wasn't completely dependent on her husband, even though he was very wealthy. And then people say that Marthella, so she was 14 years old, she was just super outgoing and extroverted and this like super bubbly, radiant young girl. She got pretty good grades. She had a lot of friends. She was very popular, but what she enjoyed doing the most was riding her horses, and especially taking part in this equestrian sport called tent pegging. So her brother Don also enjoyed tent pegging. They were both actually national junior champions of tent pegging. They had their national colours, so they were pretty good at it. Apparently this is a very popular sport in the area where they lived in any case. I had to go and look it up. So tent pegging is a sport that a rider sits on the horse, so it's a mounted sport where you use well, it looks like sticks to me, but in the description it says a sword or a lance, and then you use that to pick up objects that are on the ground and then pick them up and carry them away or whatever. So that's the object. I don't know what they do with the objects, but anyway, that's the point of the game. If someone else knows more about tent pegging, please feel free to comment below. Anyway, so this is what they were into. They owned their own horses, obviously, on their property. And then Don, so he was a year older than his sister, and he was described more as like the shy, introverted, reserved type. He also did get good grades, enjoyed obviously the sport that he took part in, and both of them were very active on the farm when they were home. So mostly well-rounded children. So their dad, Dion, he was actually a tent pegging coach for some of the older children in town for the under 18 girls and boys teams. So he coached them. So clearly it was a big deal. And Christelle, the mom, the reason why she was freelancing at the local newspaper was so that she would be able to take photos and do stories on her children when they went to these tent pegging competitions. When Dion, the dad, was younger, he was the head boy at his school, and obviously did very well, I guess. So he had very high expectations for his children, Don and Marcella. He expected both of them to do well in everything that they did. So their schoolwork, the farm work, their sports activities that they did, everything he expected them to do well and accomplish everything, because obviously one day he knew that they were going to be taking over the family farms, and he wanted them to continue being a success the way it had been for generations. So that was mainly his focus, that he was trying to make sure that his children were going to turn out to be super successful adults. So both of the Steenkamp kids were attending boarding school, and it was pretty far away from home, but apparently this is quite common for children in farming communities, especially the wealthy children of the farmers, to attend private boarding schools, because they are known to be more prestigious than the local schools available in the farming communities. So when Don and Marcella were in primary school, they both attended the Douglas Combined School in Northern Cape. That was from grade 1 to grade 7. And then as they both went to high school, obviously Don first and then Marcella, they went to separate schools. He went to an all-boys school, the Grey College, which is in Bloemfontein, and Marcella attended Hoër Meisie School Urania, which is also in Bloemfontein. So I looked it up. Bloemfontein is like more than 300 kilometers away from Griekwastad, where they lived. So this is like over 3 hours drive, basically like a 3-hour drive from their house to the school. And so the parents would try and get the kids to come home as many weekends as they were able to, especially Christelle. She really tried her best to make sure her kids were able to come home on weekends and obviously spend some family time together on the farm. But this is means a 12-hour drive all around, because it's 3 hours for her from Griekwastad to Bloemfontein to pick them up, 3 hours back home again on, I guess, the Friday afternoon after school, and then on the Sunday night, because I'm sure there's I don't know, maybe early on the Monday morning, that it's 3 hours back. They're going to drop them off at school in Bloemfontein, and then the 3-hour trip back to Griekwastad. So that's quite intense. But anyway, she was willing to do that, obviously, to see her children and spend time with them. Most people who knew the family said that they were quite close and they seemed like a happy family, but there are also reports that say that Dion was pretty strict on the children, especially Don, because he was the son of the house. He was going to carry forward the Steenkamp name. He would have to ensure that the farms and all the lands prosper for many generations to come. So he was pretty hard on his son. Okay, so let's move on to the day of the murders. So the murders happened on the 6th of April 2012. So this is Good Friday. It was Easter weekend when it happened. So basically, first thing in the morning, the family got up and went to church to attend the Easter service. Then they came home. When they came home, Don wanted to go and hunt meerkat on the property, which is apparently something that they did often, because the meerkat in one of the reports that I read, it said the meerkats would make holes like around the property, obviously, and then when they would like be riding their horses, the horses' feet would get stuck in there, and then they would injure their legs and things like that. So they would like hunt the meerkat to make sure that they stayed off the property and didn't like make holes all over the ground. So he went to go do that for a while, just I guess as a leisurely activity. I don't know. Anyway, got home, put the gun back into the safe. Apparently the safe was not locked though, it was always unlocked, but all the guns were stored inside the safe. It's just that all the family members were able to like get access to the guns at any point that they wanted to, and there were several guns there, which is also not unusual in a farming community. Most people in these communities, they do hunt. This is things that they teach their kids from a young age, so there are guns in their houses. And then Marcella was like saying or doing whatever like that, so he realized she was getting ready to go horse riding. She wanted to ride her horse, so he was like, oh cool, he's gonna go with and he'll ride his horse and they can go horse riding together. So they did that. While they were out riding through the property and wherever, it seems like they had an argument, which we are unsure what the argument was about at this point. And they got back and things were a little bit like tense or awkwardish between them. And then the 4 family members were sitting outside watching some buck on their property drinking water as the sun was setting. And then after that, I mean, like, this sounds like the life. Except for the part of living in the middle of nowhere. I don't know, that part freaks me out a little bit. But like with all the animals and things, that sounds awesome. Anyway, after the buck watching moment section of the day, they the mom made dinner, Christelle made dinner, and then they all had dinner at the table, at the dining room table. Afterwards they went into the lounge to like chill for the evening, I guess. So Marcella and her dad Dion were sitting on the couch watching TV, and in their lounge they had a desk with the computer, the family's computer on the desk. So the mom, Christelle, was sitting working on the computer and on her cell phone and stuff, doing whatever there. And then Don said that there was some lighting that he needed to fix, which had been annoying him all week. So he was like, oh cool, this is like, I have a chance to go and do that. So he went to the barn, which was like a shed, working shed, whatever thing, that had, I guess, tools and stuff in it, and he was there like trying to fix his light or whatever. And then suddenly he heard a round of gunshots coming from the house. So he hid somewhere in the barn, and he doesn't know for how long, like for however amount of time. And then he decided to come out and go and check what happened, because it was like quiet then. So he was like, okay, it seems like whatever just happened is like okay now. So he went into the house and he found Marcella like close to where the family had a landline phone. She was by the phone, like it was off the hook, but she was obviously like in a really bad state. She had been shot, she was losing a lot of blood, and he held her as she was bleeding, and she basically died in his arms. And then he kind of freaked out because he had her blood all over him, and he went to go change his shirt into another shirt, and then he saw his parents' bodies also lying there. They were both dead. And then he ran out of the farmhouse, got into the family's, one of their buckies that they owned, and then decided to go drive to the police station to go and report this, well, what he assumed was a farm murder, because I guess it's a common thing that farmers are scared of in South Africa, is this farm attack thing. Anyway, when he was driving out of their farm, at the farm gates, he saw 2 of his family's guns lying on the ground on the side of the road. So I opened the door, like took the guns, put them into the bucky with him, carried on driving, and then like on the same property but like much further down, like as you're driving down the farm, I guess, or whatever, the farm workers, all their houses and things where they stay is that side, like their accommodation. So he stopped there and screamed out of the window to warn them that there had just been a farm attack and his whole family had been shot and killed, and that he was going to the police station to report what had just happened. So then he carried on to the police station. When he got there, he was like covered in blood, and he ran in and he just started screaming at the police officers, you guys have to come, they got shot, everybody's dead, basically something like that. So the police officers, like they were on duty, like came to him. Obviously I guess he looked a little bit worrying, like it was a bit of a shocking sight at first. They went outside to the bucky to go and get the weapons that he said he had picked up, and then they went back inside. They obviously phoned whoever their supervisor is, or you know, whatever the protocols are. But either way, the person that was put in charge of or assigned this case was Colonel Dick Duvall came out now to do the investigation. But at this point, the police officers on duty had already allowed Don to wash all the blood off of his hands and his legs and his feet and arms and whatever at one of their taps or something, I guess, outside. And at this point, he had already contacted some of his family, and he was at a restaurant across the road from the police station. So this is the only restaurant in Griekwastad town. Well, it was, I'm not sure if it still is, but according to all the things I read, that was basically the only proper restaurant that they had in this town. So he was there. It's a Proviant restaurant, and he was there with some of his family members. So Colonel Duvall went across the road to go and try and convince the family to allow him to bring Don back to the police station, just to talk to him, to try and understand what is going on, what happened, you know, that kind of thing. Eventually the family were like, okay, that's fine. So Don went back with Colonel Duvall, and then he like basically took a statement. He was questioning him, and what Don said was that his whole family had been shot. He wasn't there. He was not inside the house. He was in the barn. He heard the gunshots. After some time, he ran into the house, found all his family were dead, and then the colonel asked him, did he check like the family's, like his parents' pulses or whatever, and he was like, no, he just knew that they were dead. He changed his shirt because his sister's blood was all over his shirt and it was making him like feel sick or whatever. And then he had jumped in the bucky. He told him he picked up those weapons. He screamed at the farm workers that there had been a farm murder, and then came to the police station. So that's basically what happened. So after that, I think he went home with some family members or whatever. Anyway, Colonel Duvall and some of the other officers went obviously to the house. Like, it was just like swarming with law enforcement. So obviously they called in off the crime scene, collected evidence, took photos, videos, did all the things or whatever that needed to be done. And then the next morning, Colonel Duvall contacted Don, said that he needs for him to come with him to Nahook farm to like show him where exactly what happened, and like walk him through the events that had happened the night before. So they were driving there, and the whole way there, Colonel Duvall says that Don was just like bragging about how fast he was driving his dad's bucky the night before to get to the police station. He even asked him at some point what the process is to get your inheritance. I don't know, that's really awkward, but anyway. So they got to the farm, and then Don was walking around, like all the officers were there obviously, and like showing them like, this is where I found this person or that person, or this is where I was hiding in the barn, this is where I found the weapons, whatever, you know, like showing. And then he was even like posing for photos at these like hot spots, as it's been called, where certain things happened and everything. So after that, he was supposed to be taken into the care of a former principal named Paul Buerta. So he was a family friend. I think he was one of the neighbors of the Steenkamps, and Christel and Dion had actually named him on their will and testimonies in case something happens to them, that he would be the guardian for their children. But unfortunately, he declined and said that he would rather not take Don in, because under the circumstances, he just didn't feel comfortable with Don living in the house at the same home with Paul's family. So that didn't work out so well. And anyway, at the end, Don ended up living with his tent pegging coach. His name is Benny Hackroot, and his wife Hannelie. So they took him in. I think they do have their own children. Anyway, but so Don went to go live with them then. Obviously, the friends and family of the Steenkamps held a massive funeral service, because it was all three of them. And Martheta's friends from school travelled over 300 kilometers to come say goodbye to their friend. Also some of her school teachers, obviously because she had been staying in a boarding house, so like she was living there, so these people knew her really well. And her friends were obviously distraught because she was so young. At the funeral service, Don sat between both sets of his grandparents. There is a video clip of it, I'll put it here. To me, he does look kind of emotional. Some people say he didn't have real emotion, or he wasn't genuinely crying. I don't know. I mean, to me it looks like he is emotional. So obviously the investigation went forward. Autopsies were done, the evidence was analysed, all of that. And so more information came to light. So we found out that there were 2 weapons involved. The 2 weapons that were involved was a .22 gun and a .357 Magnum revolver. And both of these weapons were owned by the family. They were kept in the safe along with other weapons, but it was only these 2 that had been taken. Christelle had been shot twice, once in her back and then once in the back of her head. And it seems like she died pretty quickly, and she probably hadn't seen her attacker before she passed away. Dion, on the other hand, had been shot in his right shoulder and in his right ear, and then in the back of his head, so 3 times, and he had also been beaten up. It seems like he had been hit in the face with the butt of a weapon, so that seems like what probably happened to him. And then with Marcella, she had probably the worst of all 3 of them, what happened to her. So she was shot 4 times, twice in her chest and then twice in her face. Her face was also severely beaten, basically almost to beyond recognition. And unfortunately, this is when the autopsy revealed that Marcella had been raped, 14-year-old Marcella. And also, this is not the first time that it had happened. They could tell by the wounds in her genital region that she had previous wounds from a previous sexual assault that were already healed or healing, and then there were now new wounds created on top of these, which must have happened within like a day before the murders, within the day of the murders. So they were quite recent. When the police found out that Marcella had been sexually assaulted, they no longer believed that this was a farm murder, and the entire narrative of the murders changed. They didn't believe Don's story or his version anymore. So basically at this point they were unable to share some of the information, understandably, with the public and with the media. So the public and the media still didn't know the full extent of what was going on, and rumors and speculation, of course, were flying all over the place. So some of the things that people thought happened, obviously, firstly, they thought that it was a farm murder. They thought it was a racially charged murder, that some angry farm workers had attacked this wealthy white family. Some people thought that this was some satanistic ritual performed by Marcella, that she had done this like murder-suicide type of thing with her family because of some beliefs that she was following. And then other people believe that it may have been Don, but the reason that they thought he would have done it is maybe he found out he was adopted and then freaked out on that day and shot his whole family because they were not his real family. So these were basically, I think, the 3 biggest like speculative things that people thought probably happened. So obviously anything is possible. Any of these things could have been the scenario, but there was quite a bit of evidence, and this evidence was clear about what had happened. So the first theory to be debunked was the farm attack. There are several reasons why this could not have been the case. The first reason is that when the family was shot, each member of the family was shot with both of the weapons involved, which would mean that there was 1 round of gunshots that happened with the 1 weapon, and then there was a second round of gunshots that had happened with the second weapon. This is how they were murdered. They could tell according to the time of, the wounds and the healing process and things like that. So in Don's version that he had given to police in his first statement, he said he was hiding in the barn, he heard a round of gunshots, he ran into the house, Marcella died in his arms, and he saw his parents and everybody was dead. But this could not have been the case because there wasn't only 1 round of gunshots. So when this was presented to him and he was questioned, he said, oh no, actually what happened was he was in the barn, he heard the first round of gunshots, he hid it for a while, then he ran into the house and then panicked when he saw everyone was dead or shot or injured or whatever. He ran out of the house again, and then he heard the second round of gunshots, so then he ran back into the house, and then this is when Marcella actually died in his arms, and then he saw his parents and everything and realized everyone was dead, changed his shirt, and went to the police station. So, but if this is true, then that means that an assailant or intruder or whoever intruder, whatever was in his house, would have been there when he ran in the first time, why did they not shoot him? Why was he not killed? He didn't even see these assailants. He can't describe them. He never saw them. He didn't hear them, nothing. And they did not clearly see or hear him because he wasn't shot. So he's in the barn, he's hiding. He hears gunshots. He waits a while. He runs into the house where the intruder is. They don't somehow run into each other, even though they're like at the same place. The house is not that big. It's a farmhouse. And then he realizes, sees all the family members, realizes they're all dead, and then runs back out again, hears more gunshots, so which means the intruder came out of wherever he was hiding away from Don. For some reason he was brave enough to shoot Dion, but too scared to shoot Don. Anyway, and then the intruder shot them all again and then disappeared without anybody seeing him or her. No one saw them enter, no one saw them leave. So that's odd. And the only way that they could have gotten access to the farmhouse, like actually gotten into the house, would have been at the time that the family were watching the bucks drinking water at sunset or whatever, which means that the person would have been sitting somewhere inside the house waiting while the family were having dinner and everything before they went to go watch TV and were shot. So was this person just like hiding in the house for however amount of time? So none of this sounds plausible, obviously. The other issue is that there was a large amount of Marthella's blood found outside the house. So obviously at some point during the attack she had been attacked inside the house and she had been attacked outside the house. At the point at which she was being attacked outside the house, she would have probably been screaming because she had a lot of defensive wounds and things on her, so she was definitely fighting for her life. And Don claims that he couldn't see or hear any part of any of the attacks, but if he was outside of the barn where he said he was sitting and hiding, according to police how they investigated the scene, he would have had full vision and definitely would have heard her here outside being attacked by the intruders. So that also doesn't make sense. So that's the second reason. And then thirdly, the dogs were never poisoned, and usually apparently a lot of people say it's common if someone is planning to execute a farm murder, they bring poison with, unfortunately, to poison the dogs of the family, so that obviously there's no barrier between them and they can get into the farmhouse. So the dogs were all fine, none of them were poisoned, and then also nothing was taken from the house. There was they had all their valuables there, their TV, their computer, all their cell phones. The family had a ton of money, they had a safe full of things, also all the other weapons were there. Literally the only things that were taken were the 2 weapons that were used in the murder. Nothing else was taken off of this property. So it clearly wasn't for financial reasons why the person broke in. So then how did they gain access, and why did they do it? Did they just appear in the house, kill all the people except Don, and then disappear out of the house again? So obviously this theory was debunked and nobody believed Don's theory in law enforcement. Nobody in law enforcement believed his theory. So the second rumor that was going around about the Satanistic ritual, there is no evidence of that. There's nothing anywhere at all that has anything to do with Satanistic rituals. There's nothing to say that Marthella had anything to do with Satanism herself, and there's nothing like that. I think what just happens is people don't really understand what Satanism is. Even still to this day, people don't really understand what it is, and they think it's some devil worshipping cult, which it's not. Use Google, it's your best friend. Anyway, and so when people hear this horrific thing that happens and it's unexplained and it happens to especially people that they know and they just can't understand how it could have happened, the first thing that their mind jumps to is like, what is the most horrible, horrific thing that could possibly have happened? You know, something to do with a Satanistic cult. So I don't think that had anything to do with anything. That was just some people, I don't know, falling off the deep end somewhere. And then the last one, this one was partially correct, because people were saying that Don murdered his family because he was adopted. The only thing was, Don was definitely not adopted. Tests were done. Evidence clearly shows Don is the biological son of Christelle and Dion. Marthella is their biological daughter. Don and Marthella are completely blood related. So sadly, this means that Don raped his younger sister more than once, and then murdered his parents and his sister. So this is the motive. The police, Detective DeVol, and also the prosecutors this was Advocate Kluter, they all said that the motive was that because Don had obviously sexually assaulted his sister, he didn't want anyone to know, so that's why he murdered the family. So on the 21st of August 2012, about 4 months after the murders, Colonel de Vol arrested Don Steenkamp. While he was at school, obviously he stayed at boarding school, in front of everyone during break time. So he literally went, arrested the boy, took him to his boarding house, lodge area where he could get some of his belongings or whatever, and then took him out of the school grounds in handcuffs in front of everybody. So some people say he may have done that on purpose to like make a point about power and show Don who is really in control. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but anyway, I do think that's quite embarrassing. I was speaking to a friend of mine about this case, and I did say, I mean, Don obviously didn't know that they were onto him. He probably wasn't like a flight risk or anything. They could have just waited until after school hours maybe, and then gone to like the boarding staff or whoever and quietly discussed it and like escorted him out of the building. But anyway, to each their own. Who am I to tell authorities how to do their jobs? So yes, so he was arrested, and his trial started at the end of 2013 with Judge President Frans Gommel presiding over his case at the Northern Cape High Court. During his trial, some of the texts that he had sent his friends were presented in court because they were quite questionable, to say the least. And his friends were actually the ones who had given these messages over to authorities because they were so strange. The one text message was sent on the night of the murders while he had been sitting in that restaurant with his family. He had been texting his friends and things. The owner of that restaurant even said that she was like concerned about him and if he was okay, and he was mostly just like chilled and like texting on his phone like constantly the whole time. So his one friend said he sent him a message saying that his family had all been murdered and the police suspected him for the murders, and his friend sent him a message back like, why did they suspect you? And then Don was like, because there's no one else's DNA or fingerprints at the crime scene except mine. Which is, I mean, that part is true, but what he said to his friend was a lie, because on the night of the murder, the police did not see him as a suspect. Everybody thought it was a farm murder, and they were looking for farm workers that had attacked this family. Nobody suspected him. So it's odd why he sent that to his friend, and only he, the perpetrator who had committed these crimes, would know whose DNA and fingerprints are going to be found at the murder scene. So that was, you know, very telling that he sent that text message just after the murders had happened. And then another friend, I think this friend's dad actually told the authorities about this message after the friend told his dad. So basically what had happened was the friends had all been talking at the beginning of the year, and they decided that at the end of the year, for December summer holidays, they wanted to go to Durban. And so Don had asked his parents, and they were like, yeah, no, absolutely not. Are we going to let you go with a bunch of 15, 16-year-old boys to Durban alone, you know, to the coast on holiday by yourselves? So I guess he was quite upset about that. And sometime after the murders had happened, he sent this friend a message saying, well, now I can go on holiday to the coast with you guys in December because there's no one here who's going to stop me, and also I'm going to have a lot of spending money for us to take with on our holiday. Like, what are you even doing, dude? So yeah, so those messages were presented in court and did definitely not look good for him. Something else that was presented in court were 2 t-shirts. Both were belonging to Don, and they were the t-shirts that he wore on the night of the murders. So the first one was a navy t-shirt. It was torn and it was completely blood soaked, and this t-shirt had been found the next morning, the morning after the murders, while the police were on the scene, by Colonel de Vol and taken obviously into evidence, and it had been found under a towel on Don's bedroom floor. And then the second t-shirt was also had blood on it, and he had used this t-shirt when he was rinsing his arms and legs and everything of the blood, and apparently left the t-shirt in the bushes, like shrubbery area at the police station. So the first t-shirt, the one that was torn and completely full of blood, Don tried to say that it was while he was holding Marthella as she was dying in his arms, that she held on the t-shirt and it tore, and that's how the blood got all over his t-shirt or whatever. So, but according to evidence and analysis that were done on the shirt, they said that the blood splatter coincides with someone who was in close proximity to the person who was being beaten with, some object like blunt force trauma to the face, and that's the splatter that was on his shirt. So he must have been very close to Marcella at the time, because it was her blood that was splattered all over his shirt at the time when she was being beaten and attacked. It was not from blood like falling onto you from someone. That's not what the blood splatter analysis told them. And then also, because Marcella had so many defensive wounds on her, she had definitely fought to attack her. Like, she fought for her life. So that's more likely how his short shirt got torn in this whole struggle and fight, which could be why he changed his shirt, actually, because it was torn and like probably the blood showed something, and maybe he planned on discarding it later, or he wasn't thinking. I'm not sure why it was just left on his bedroom floor, because obviously authorities were going to come in and find it. But anyway, he did change into the other shirt, and that was the shirt that he then used at the police station. So Colonel DeVol did ask him why he washed his hands and legs and everything off the blood immediately and took that shirt off, and again he said his sister's blood made him sick, which some people think is strange because he's used to hunting animals on the farm, so he shouldn't be like, freaked out by blood or anything. He should be quite used to it. But then I'm like thinking, maybe, not that I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt or side with him here, I'm just saying it's probably different if you have like, I'm vegan. It's not like I'm here for animal hunting, obviously, but I'm just saying if you hunt animals and their blood goes on you, then it's probably not as much of you don't have an emotional response or connection to the animal. So you're like, cool, whatever, this is the animal that I shot. But maybe if it's someone that you love's blood that's going all over you, then you might have a more emotional reaction to the blood. To see someone you care about and they're bleeding to death, it's not really the same thing. So yeah. Another thing was that there was gunshot residue found on his clothes. They did test his hands that night at the police station, but obviously at that point he had already washed his hands. The police had let him wash his hands, so obviously there was nothing on his hands. But there was on his shirt that he was wearing. But Don says that the reason for that is because he was hunting meerkat earlier that day, remember? So that is where the gunshot residue comes from. And he did admit, however, that him and Marcella had an argument earlier that day. He just couldn't remember what the argument was about. So the prosecution decided to help him out. Advocate Twitter put to the judge that what happened that day was that Marcella had been sexually assaulted or basically raped by her brother before. And then on that day when they went horse riding, they stopped at a point, let the horses rest, and they were sitting and chilling or whatever, and he raped her again. But this time she said she's going to tell her dad. I guess obviously it's something that you're ashamed of, especially if like rape is never something that it's easy to come forward and talk about, but especially if it's your brother, like, and this is your first time, like, that's just very embarrassing, I'm sure. Like, she probably was shocked and horrified, she didn't know what to do, and that's probably why she didn't tell anyone the first time it happened. But when it happened again, she was like, yeah, no dude, now I'm going to tell on you. And then they probably had a whole argument and came back, and that's why it was so tense, because he was like waiting for her to like spill it. And probably what the prosecution thinks is, while the family was sitting and watching these bucks drinking water, he was formulating this plan in his mind of what he's going to do to get out of this whole situation. And obviously the only way to do that would be to kill Marcella before she tells anyone, but he can't just obviously kill her, so he would just have to kill all his parents, just kill everybody, make it seem like a farm murder because these things happen, and then he could inherit all the money and live his life. So they think that's basically what happened, and therefore they were charging him with premeditated murder and not just manslaughter or normal murder. That's the reason for that. Yeah, so after dinner, when his family went out chilling in the lounge, watching TV, doing whatever, that's when he decided, okay, it's go time. So he went to the room where the safe was, took the .357 Magnum revolver out of the safe, walked into the lounge, shot his mom in the back because she was the one sitting at the computer, and his dad obviously like lunged forward at him like, dude, you just shot my wife, what are you doing? Lunged forward at him, and he shot his dad, got him in the right shoulder, got him in the right ear. His dad fell down to the ground. Marcella ran out to get away from her brother, and he chased after her, They got outside. He shot her twice in the chest. Because of the amount of blood, it's possible that this is at the point at which he beat her so severely in her face and whatever. And then it was like full of adrenaline. Maybe he beat his dad too, because there were some smudges around Dion. So it looks like he tried to, I don't know, maybe drag himself away, or to, you know, to the phone, or to the get out of the house or something. He had tried to like move himself. So maybe Don had seen and like had just hit him with the butt to like make his dad go down. Then he went back to the room where the safe was, shook out the .22 gun, and then came back to the lounge and shot both of his parents in the back of their heads. What people say the reason for this might be is because he was taught proper hunting skills growing up on the farm, obviously. And this is going to sound terrible, but once you hunt an animal, if you've shot them and they're now suffering on the ground, you don't leave an animal to suffer. You put it out of its misery. So you like execution style shoot it in the head to make sure it's dead. And that's what people think he was maybe doing. Like, it was just like natural reflex. He was taught, you put a suffering animal out of its misery. Papa shot both of his parents in the back of the head. At this point, he saw that Marcella was still alive and had come back into the house and was at the phone, I guess trying to phone someone, just bleeding everywhere. He went, shot her twice in the face, and then she obviously collapsed on the kitchen floor and succumbed to her injuries. And then it was at this point that he went to his room, changed t-shirts. His room apparently was a huge mess in the crime scene photos. It was like it's very strange. It's like he was looking through his cupboard for a specific t-shirt. I'm not really sure why he did that. But anyway, so this is what Colonel Duval and the prosecution think actually happened on that night. The reason for this is also because Don's timeline does not add up. There's no way that he could have done all of the running to the barn, back from the barn, back up and down like that or whatever, and sat there while Marcella died in his arms, and then changed his t-shirt and picked the weapons up at the end of the farm, like where the farm gates were. That's where he found the weapons. He didn't have them on him. And then warned the farm workers and still got to the police station before 7. I think it said he got there like at 18:59 or something, so like literally just before 7. Well, I guess he told them that this whole farm attack started happening earlier than what it actually happened, because he needed enough time to have done all of these things. But what Don wasn't aware of was that his mom, Christelle, had actually sent a text message to her sister, like they were talking to each other, and the last message she sent to her sister was at 18:37. So that means that he must have done all of this and that whole journey in under 23 minutes, which Colonel Duval and the investigating officers and everybody, they tried to do this. There is no way that this could have all happened in that time frame. It is physically impossible. So that's why they also said that his version of his events is clearly not true, because it was impossible that it could have happened the way he says it happened. It's more likely that he just got up from where they were all sitting in the lounge, killed everybody, and then got into the bakkie and drove away. And had obviously the weapons with him in the bakkie. So his whole entire version of the story could not be confirmed according to the evidence and the time frames that, you know, was there. You can't dispute that. And all of this whole thing with the murders of the family happened, and all the controversy that was happening. There was like an on-off battle with the school that he was in, the Grey College in Bloemfontein, because obviously the parents of the other children were starting to complain, like they didn't want their children to be in the school with a possible murderer. They don't know what's going on, but it's making them uncomfortable. There was like a whole thing between Don and the school. But eventually, I think after he was arrested, the school said to him that they will send him his schoolwork, like his assignments and his work and everything, via correspondence school, but it's probably better if he doesn't come onto the property anymore. So obviously his reputation at this point was completely gone, and the school didn't want to be associated with that, because then their reputation would have been messed. So many people say that he didn't seem very emotional, like he was really grieving in the weeks after the murder happened. In fact, he actually attended this gymkhana, so it's an equestrian event for that tent pegging that him and his sister did. He attended this competition. It was like an annual competition that happened in May 2012, so it's literally a month after his family were all murdered, and he was off attending equestrian competitions, especially a competition that his sister should have been competing in, And the worst part, or I don't know, the strangest part, is that he attended this competition on Motella's horse instead of his own. I'm not sure why he did that, it's very odd, but anyway. So I don't feel like that's everyone grieves in their own way. I know, everybody grieves in their own way, don't tell me that, I'm aware. I'm just saying, like, and obviously your whole life isn't going to stop, but like 3 weeks after your family were killed, or 4 weeks or whatever, that just seems a little bit like, and it's an event that your sister should have been at, and you're going there with her horse. I don't know, that just seems a little bit strange to me. Like, I would think that you would still be like heavy in the mourning process and like trying to like get to terms with what happened, and it just seems like he was just like cool and going on with his life and all of that stuff.
If you fall off a horse, you simply have to get on again and ride. That expression could not have been more true for anyone at this recent equestrian event than for 15-year-old Don Steenkamp. Don's life has been turned upside down.
The only thing is, at school, before he was like basically like removed from the school property and like banned from coming back, they did say that before he was obviously always described as this quiet, introverted guy, and now he suddenly became very loud and rude and arrogant and all of that after the murders. So some people are wondering if he just stopped caring about his education, because in his head, as he had obviously been questioning like Colonel Duval, he thought he was going to get this whole inheritance now, so who needs school anyway, you know, I'm going to be rich. I don't know, maybe that was the way he was thinking, I'm not really sure. So on the 27th of March 2014, Don was officially found guilty on all 5 charges that he had been accused of, and his sentencing hearing was in 13th of August 2014. And basically how his sentencing went was, for the 3 premeditated murders, he was given 20 years for each of those, and then he was given 12 years for the rape of Motella, and then he was given another 4 years for the defeating the ends of justice charge. So basically it is 76 years, but Judge Frans Gommel said that these would all run concurrently, so they would run at the same time. So he would actually only be serving 20 years, and the reason for that is because he was a minor, he was under 16 at the time of the murders, he couldn't be charged as 25 to life. Like in South Africa, you can't sentence a child to such a life sentence, because they can still be rehabilitated, apparently. Anyway, so he is basically just got 20 years, and he will be eligible for parole in 10 years, which would be March 2024. During this entire case, as the investigation was happening, the trial, everything was happening, there's this journalist, his name is Jacques Steenkamp. I know his surname he doesn't have any relation to the family, the victims and Don and everything. It's just they have the same surname, strangely enough, coincidentally enough. Anyway, he was a very well-known journalist in the area at that time. He had made friends with some of the law enforcement over the years while he was covering cases and things like that. So he was much closer to the case than some of the other reporters were. And because of that, he ended up writing a book called The Griekwastad Murders, The Crime That Shook South Africa. And this book was published in April 2014, which is less than a month that he was found guilty, but before his sentencing hearing. This book was published. Since then, Jacques has immigrated to New Zealand with his family, so they were living a happy life on that side, but his book was picked up to be turned into a film, and this film was released on DSTV box office on the 5th of May 2020. So it was produced by Vickers du Toit and directed by Joshua Malherbe, and it starred the now famous Arnold Vosloo, the South African actor who played in The Mummy, and he was playing the role of lead detective Duval. And this film was nominated for 7 SAFTA awards and won 2 of them. It was for Best Feature Film and Best Editing, so that is awesome. It is now available on Showmax. I watched it. It's actually a really good movie. It's got quite a lot of details. Obviously it isn't 100% according to the case because it is a film, but it is quite close to the facts as far as my research goes. So sadly, the real life Dick Duval passed away in May 2021 from COVID. At the time of his death, he was Brigadier Duval and no longer Colonel Duval, And the journalist Jacques Steenkamp wrote such a nice tribute message for Dick de Waal on Facebook for his wife. His wife is the Northern Cape Provincial Major General Henriette de Waal, and Jacques wrote such a sweet message for her and their kids on Facebook. So Don is currently serving his prison sentence in the Boksburg prison. I'm not really sure why he was sentenced to the prison in Boksburg when he came from the Northern Cape. But anyway, that prison is here on the East Rand in Johannesburg, pretty close to where I live. So it's just odd to me. But anyway, this is where he's serving his sentence. And according to South African law, obviously if you murder someone, I'm sure it's like this in other places in the world as well, but if you murder someone, you can't inherit any of their money or their estate or anything like that legally. So, but his paternal grandparents found a legal loophole to get around this. So Don's dad is Dion, and Dion's parents are Don Senior and Betty Steenkamp. So Don was named after his paternal grandfather. And Dion's parents inherited all of the estates and the finances and everything of the family when Dion and Christelle passed away, because obviously Martha had also passed away, and so the parents received all of the money and the funding and everything. And what they did was, so they opened a trust fund and moved all the money into there as a donation for their grandson. And so basically the whole estate and all the money is worth 23 million rand. And this means that either way, whether Don gets out when he's eligible for parole now in 2024, which is in 3 years, or when he does definitely get out in 13 years, when his sentence is over, either way he's going to get that 23 million rand that his grandparents have placed in a trust fund so nicely for him. So I don't know if I completely agree with that. I think that's horrible actually, that you murder both of your parents, but then you can still lay claim to their entire life's savings and earnings because your grandparents want the family farms and businesses and money to stay in your family so badly. I don't know. Anyway, I don't really agree with it. But Don Senior did pass away at the end of July 2013. So this was before Don was even arrested and charged with the murders. So I don't know if the grandpa could sense that something was going to happen and he was trying to protect his grandson, or he was just trying to protect the family name, or whatever he was trying to do. But he definitely planned this ahead to ensure that his grandson would be taken care of after he passed away. So basically Don Senior had been sick for a while. After the murders happened, he had 3 strokes, and at this point he was in the Mediclinic in Kimberley, and Don Jr. apparently even visited his grandpa there a few times before he eventually passed away due to the stroke. So he was 8 years old at this time. The family do seem to be a bit divided. Some of them completely believe in Don's innocence, that there's no way that he could have possibly done this to his own family. Other family members, like his paternal grandma Betty Steenkamp, they believe that he did do it, but they still support him and stand by him and have publicly said that they forgive him for what he did. So either way, he does have quite a good support system. One of his family members even said that this triple murder and all the drama that they've been through because of it and afterwards has actually brought the family closer together. So yeah, I don't know. Until he gets out and comes and murders all of y'all, I'm just saying. But anyway, I understand family's family. You have to support them no matter what. That was a very tragic story of the Steenkamp family murders. I do think that there are a lot of similarities. Eerily, it's very similar to the Van Breda Axe family murders, because in both cases it's like a rich white family whose children go to these prestigious schools and have everything going for them, but then the son of the family murders his parents and siblings. And obviously in Henry's case, his sister Marlu survived the attack, but she doesn't remember anything that happened. Whereas in Don's case, obviously his sister Marthela did, although she really tried to fight for life. She first tried to run away, she fought, she tried to phone for help, she did try everything. Unfortunately, she didn't make it. I think also the other thing is both of them blamed an intruder for the attack, specifically a black man for the attack, when they knew very well it was them that did it. I think the biggest difference is that in Henry's case, obviously he did get a life sentence or life sentences because he was obviously over the age of 18, so he wasn't a minor anymore, whereas Don was under the age of 16, and that's why he couldn't get a 25 to life sentence, and he only got 20 years, and all his sentences ran concurrently, which I don't really think is fair. I don't know how you feel about child murderers, but I'm just like, if you're gonna commit adult crimes, you should do adult time. Anyway, that's just my opinion. So yeah, I'll link the Van family murders video up here somewhere that I did a while ago. If you haven't seen it, you can go and watch it just to see how similar it is. It's really creepy actually. I don't know, South African boys, what is going on with you? Why are you killing all your family, your parents and your siblings all the time, especially you rich kids? What are you doing? Like, take all the opportunities that you're getting and have a wonderful life. What's wrong with you? Anyway, so that's it for this video though. So until next time, bye. So they lived on a farm in a farming community. If I say farm one more time. Anyway, the local newspaper was so that she would be able to take photos and do stories on her children when they went to these tent pegging competitions. So sadly, the real life Colonel Dick de Wol, or Brigadier Dick de Wol as he was, which was I'm sorry, I have like a frog in my throat. I don't know what's happening with me. Hopefully my fake coffee that I'm drinking is not smudging my lipstick. Anyway, so both of the